Hello, everyone. This is My Two Cents, and today I'm going to be responding to a question put forward by George Cook of African American Reports.
Hi, everybody. This is George Cook of African American Reports. There's been a lot of discussion about a $15 an hour minimum wage here in the United States, especially in some cities throughout the United States. And what detractors of this often say is that if you raise minimum wage to $15, the companies will have to fire employees to make this happen. And a question I have, and it's just a question, let me know if I'm on the wrong track here. But how come those detractors don't make the same argument when a CEO gets a $25 million bonus or gets $1 million raise? How come you don't hear that argument then? How come no one says, oh, we just gave this CEO all this money, all this golden parachute, we're going to have to raise, or we're going to have to fire people or raise prices on the goods? You only hear that argument when it's poor people. You don't hear it when the rich are getting richer. So let me know if I'm wrong on this. If that's your argument, it should go both ways. All right, now.
Basically, Mr. Cook wants to know why some people who oppose raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour, and they say that they do so on the basis that it would force businesses to fire employees, are at the same time silent when a CEO receives a $25 million bonus. Mr. Cook thinks that to be consistent, opponents of minimum wage laws should be complaining when this happens. Perhaps he thinks this should be seen as a waste of money, or that money should be used to hire more employees. Before I begin, I would like to thank Mr. Cook for presenting his question in a straightforward manner and not making any unfounded assumptions about the people who oppose raising the minimum wage. Mr. Cook, since you were able to raise your questions with respect, I will do my best to give you a straightforward, respectful answer without any snarkiness and/or sarcasm. Let's start by addressing whether or not the assertion that raising the minimum wage would force businesses to fire employees. Let's ask, is that true? Well, think of it like this. Let's imagine that I'm a business owner, and let's pick a simple example, like a diner. Now, as any restaurant owner will tell you, the profit margins in the restaurant business are incredibly thin. If you take a look at the following chart, you'll see that at the lowest in 2008, restaurant profit margins were about 0.4%. They ended up rising to 5.1% in 2013, but nonetheless, thin profit margins. Nonetheless, I have managed to develop a successful business over the past few years, and let's say I have 20 full-time employees. Now, they all agreed to work for the wages that I pay them, and they are free to either request a raise or leave employment and seek opportunities elsewhere at any time. However, the government comes along and tells me, you must pay your employees $15 an hour. Now, I don't just magically have more money because the government tells me I have to pay my employees that much. That's money that I have to pay out of my own pocket if I want to keep my business and my employees. Now, for a larger business with very high profit margins, the minimum wage law probably won't be as much of an issue for them. But if you're a small business like me, I now find myself between a rock and a hard place. If I want to keep my business open, I need to make a certain amount of profit. Otherwise, I can't pay my bills and my personal costs. But now, minimum wage laws will force me to have less profit. What options are available to me? Well, I can raise the costs of the food I sell in my diner in order to cover those costs, but if I do this, my customers probably won't be so inclined to keep eating there, and I'll end up losing even more money. I can cut back the hours of my employees, but that means they'll end up making less money, and in all likelihood, they'll either have to seek employment elsewhere or at the very least get another job, a second job, in order to cover their personal costs. And finally, we have the third option. I can cut the number of employees I have so that I can keep paying those that I keep. Now, when you consider the above three options, this usually will turn out to be the only viable option most of the time. Or, of course, I suppose I could just throw in the towel and close my business, but then that leaves all my employees out of a job. Now, remember what I said earlier about larger businesses. If there's a business that has very high profit margins, it probably isn't quite so concerned about minimum wage laws. It can afford to pay its employees more. However, minimum wage laws end up taking jobs off the market from smaller businesses and therefore take away competition from the larger ones. Less competition means higher costs. That's just basic economics 101. However, a further point. Even in the case of larger businesses, if those businesses are forced to pay their employees more, then inevitably they will be forced to charge more for their products and services in order to make up for the increased costs. So, all this being said, who exactly does the minimum wage help? I'll tell you who. It helps libtards like Bernie Sanders. You see, leftists know that minimum wage legislation sounds good on paper and in speeches. If you elect me, I'll make sure those greedy business owners pay you what you deserve. However, in reality, these people aren't stupid. They know that higher minimum wage means more people will be laid off. More people laid off means more people seeking welfare, and more people dependent on welfare ensures that Democrats keep getting elected. In summary, Democrats support minimum wage laws because they want you to lose your job so that they can buy your vote with welfare. They know that uneducated, welfare-dependent people will always be willing to give up more of their freedom provided they get just a little bit of money for doing nothing. Bottom line, raising the minimum wage leads to fewer jobs. One only needs to look at the case studies they've done in cities like Seattle to see this. However, on to your second question. Why do I not complain when a CEO receives a $25 million bonus? I mean, isn't that money that could be spent on the employees or on hiring more employees? Well, perhaps, but I think most people outside the business world haven't really thought much about what it takes to be a CEO. Let's look at what Entrepreneur.com has to say about what it takes to be a successful CEO. They list 5 things: own the vision, provide proper resources, build the culture, make good decisions, and oversee and deliver the company's performance. Now, I'd like to quick focus on that fourth one. Make good decisions. A new CEO is often surprised by the breadth of issues confronting him or her. One minute, the CEO is discussing a new product. The next, a human resources issue. And then along comes a legal issue. It's impossible for anyone to be an expert in all aspects of business, yet the CEO is the person tasked with making the decisions. Many problems will require a solution that will end up affecting multiple departments, and only the CEO is empowered to take such an action. Everyone else can pass the buck from time to time, but the CEO will make the final call when no one else will or can. So let's imagine an entry-level minimum wage worker in a large corporation. Every day he comes to work probably around 9, and he performs simple manual labor until 4:30 or 5 that day. He'll have maybe a 1 to 2 hour lunch break and 1 or 2 other 15-minute coffee breaks throughout the day. At the end of the day, he goes home and he does not think about work again until the next morning. If he makes a mistake on the job, the consequences will probably be minimal, maybe just a simple talking to with his supervisor. His weekends are usually free, and the odds that he'll be called in to work on his days off are probably slim to none. Now, this guy probably doesn't see the CEO of his corporation much, if at all. However, from his perspective, he might think that it's unfair that he works hard for minimum wage compared to the CEO who makes millions, especially if his idea of what a CEO does is formed by cartoons.
And in addition, Pewterschmidt Industries' pharmaceutical division is up over 30%. Profits in new media have doubled each quarter over the past year, and our stock is at an all-time high.
All right, stand aside. I'll take it from here. Good afternoon, gentlemen. My name is Peter Griffin. I will be running the company from henceforth. Now, I want you all to lay some business talk on me. I need ideas. What can we do to make this quarter more quarterly?
However, let's think about the life in the day-to-day life of a CEO. Well, in reality, the CEO probably arrives at work early in the morning, 7 o'clock at least. He needs his time to read through his emails from his clients, his business partners, his department heads, and needs to get spun up on what's going on in the market, what new business regulations have come out that might potentially affect the company. By the time 9 o'clock rolls around, he probably has a slew of meetings with leadership from all the various departments of the company, with the board of directors, with potential clients, with potential business partners. He doesn't necessarily get a lunch break, since over lunch he's probably discussing work with whoever he's having lunch with. And despite the wide range of issues he's going to be discussing with so many different people, he needs to be able to retain all that information and apply it smartly to the decisions that he's making for the company. The CEO has a lot of pressure on his shoulders. Unlike the low-level employee, if he makes a bad business decision, like choosing to go forward with an unprofitable product or service, then the company could lose millions of dollars and his job will be on the line, as well as the jobs of thousands of his employees. By the time the CEO is getting ready to go home, it may well be 9 o'clock at night, or if not midnight on some occasions. Further, what if he has a wife and kids? How many of his son's soccer games or his daughter's ballet recitals do you think he's going to miss over the years? How many times will he be looking forward to some free time on the weekend, or even going on a week's vacation, and then 5 minutes before he's about to leave, he gets a phone call saying, "Sir, we need you to come into work immediately"? How much time does he get to spend alone with his wife, and will that time end up being spent in marital counseling? Now, considering all of this, let me ask you, why would you want to work a job like this, unless you were receiving a very adequate form of compensation. Not everyone is cut out to be a CEO, and given the gravity of his position, I would say, yeah, a CEO deserves to get paid a little bit more than the labor worker whose position can be filled by virtually anyone. So suppose that the CEO makes a good business decision that turns out high profits and raises the value of the company's stock by $1. So assuming the company has, let's say, just 100 million shares of stock, well, that's a $100 million profit. Now, given it was the CEO's good business acumen that brought about those profits, is it so unreasonable that he be given a modest reward? Let's just say 10%. Well, that's $10 million. Now, you could still object at this point and say, no, the CEO still doesn't need that money. That is money that should be given to his employees. Well, in a true free market system with competition, that might be more likely to happen. Let's imagine two businesses, Business A and Business B, who are competitors in a free market. Business A makes a large profit, and he rewards the CEO with $25 million, like in your example before. Some of the employees of Business A are mad about this. They think that that's money that should have been distributed to them. Well, when this happens, Business B could come along and say, hey, everybody, if you come work for Business B, we promise that we'll take our profits and give them to our employees, not the CEO. In a free market, this is an incentive that Business B could use in order to try to win over employees and give it an edge against Business A. That's the beauty of free market competition. In a free market, businesses have to try and provide the highest wages to their employees and the lowest price products to their customers if they're going to be competitive. It's the government that comes in and snuffs out competition and stops this from happening. So coming full circle, Mr. Cook, I think that if you are concerned about people being able to have jobs and make a living, the answer is not to advocate for minimum wage laws and other types of government regulation. This will just result in more joblessness for the people that you advocate for. The answer is for you to support less government regulation and more free market capitalism. This is the only system that can lift people out of poverty. That is my 2 cents. Take it for what it's worth. Thanks so much for watching. If you like this video, please hit like and subscribe. To follow me on Twitter, Minds.com, or VidMe, check out the link in the description. There will be more videos coming, so stay tuned.